Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 294. Today we are covering tweaking setups and getting ready for the fall with my good buddy, Greg Litzinger. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. And man, I was hoping to get out and maybe check a few trail cameras this weekend. And yeah, we got the Africa heat, man. It's been like 96 plus degrees. It's probably, I'm probably not telling anyone out there listening that anything that they don't already know. You're probably getting the slammed in the face with the heat too. And my plan was to try to go check a handful of cameras and put out one additional one that I wanted to get out. And yeah, not gonna do it. It's I think today it's 98. So my deer work in the woods stops at about 92. Actually, that's a lie. But I don't have anything super pressing, so I'm not gonna go out and kill myself if I don't have to. So what I ended up doing, still trying to get some stuff done. Fast approaching is the Idaho hunt, so I kind of went through all my gear, made sure I have everything that I need, and then with the heat, I figured, hey, might as well start washing my gear and hanging it out to dry because it'll dry in about 2 seconds with the heat. So that's what I've been doing. And then I did shoot the bow a little bit. Like the archery sessions in the backyard aren't very long in this heat, but what it does do is it forces me to shoot fewer arrows and have to make those arrows count. So was recovering from a little bit of a back rib injury from jiu-jitsu, and so I haven't really been able to shoot a whole lot. And so I've finally been feeling better, had some chiropractic adjustments, some massages, et cetera, just left it heal with time, and it was feeling better, so I was able to actually go out and shoot. And shooting out the distance, roughly about 53 yards. It's what I can shoot in my backyard. So I was able to go out and get some reps in, and do a little bit of that, which was about the extent of my outdoor activity this past weekend. But for today's show, we're gonna just kind of jump straight into things. Want to make quick mention before we do that. Just take care of a few pieces of housekeeping here. Our buddies over at Exodus, if you're not familiar with Velvet Fest, they are kicking that campaign off right now. That is the official start to deer season, and Exodus helps get the ball rolling for everyone's summer scouting. I know when Velvet Fest hits, for me at least, as I mentioned, it means I need to make sure I have my cameras out in the woods and everything ready and deployed for the season. So from July 15th through August 19th, they'll have awesome prizes for people who use the hashtag Velvet Fest on social media, showing their whitetail adventures. Also, if you're in the market for a trail camera, Velvet Fest will be the perfect opportunity to get ready for the season. Exodus will be sending out exclusive savings through their email newsletter throughout the campaign. But to get things started, save 20% on any multiple Exodus render or any render bundle for the first 100 orders. Use the code VelvetFest, that's all one word, VELVETFEST, to lock in these awesome summer savings. Every single camera order comes with a random prize card. I've been told by Jake and the crew that they have some pretty killer deals that you're not going to want to miss out on, which includes the Exodus MMT tailored arrow. Over the last 7 years, Exodus has consistently shown they build quality gear that flat out works. And of course, the best truck camera warranty period. Every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. Yep, that's 5 years, literally half a decade. You are covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because their cameras are already built to last. They also launched the Exodus MMT this summer, a tailored arrow built to your specifications using nothing but the highest grade components, period. Head to their website and use the 3D builder and experience the best shooting hunting arrow available. I've been flinging these, and they are awesome. So make sure if you are in the market for some arrows or just looking for something maybe a little bit better than what you have, be sure to head over to the website and check that out. So be sure to take part in the Velvet Fest celebration, and be sure to tag Exodus because they're going to want to check out what you guys have going on this year. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. Have my good buddy Greg Litzinger on. This is kind of our annual summer catch up. We usually get a chance during the summer just to kind of chop it up and talk a little deer hunting and see how our plans are coming together. And so that's what we did today. Greg's been putting out some videos, and he's really kind of taken a different approach this year. It's interesting as we get older, how we start to tweak and adapt our approach to the hunting season based on previous success, and maybe dialing in things that have worked for us, things that have not worked for us. And so Greg is actually taking a little bit of a new approach. I would say that maybe he's going back to the future. He's going back to some tried and true things that were really, really successful for him, whatever, 5, 10, 10-ish years ago. Whenever maybe he had a little bit more time and not quite so many commitments from a parent and work standpoint. But he's kind of adopting that approach again because he had a ton of success during that period of time. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today we're doing our annual. He's adjusting his headset right now, making sure he looks good.
Yes.
I have
face made for radio.
Face made for radio. I have our annual summer soiree.
Yes.
With my good buddy, none other than Mr. Greg the Bowhunting Fiend Litzinger. What's going on, man? And the fans go wild.
What's happening?
Nothing, man. Just glad we could get together. It's been a minute, man. It has been a few months. We usually try to get together every summer at some point. Usually we always try to get together once in the winter. Did we do that this year?
In the spring.
Did we?
Right before your party, I came up.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, because then you came to the party.
Yeah, you forgot to tell them about the party. You're like, oh, by the way, I have a party.
Literally, everyone who I invited got notice of a party. The day of the party, essentially. Yeah, it was no more than like 5 days before the party. My wife told me about the party 3 months before that. Yeah. She was like, "How many of your friends are coming?" I was like, "I don't know," and didn't ask anybody yet.
I'm still waiting for a response. I don't know.
She's like, it's on Saturday, right? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I got it. I literally invited you, Aaron, Tom, which he couldn't make it because I think he had to work. And I think I might have invited one other person. No, actually, I think it was just you three, if I'm not mistaken. And you and Aaron both came. Tom had to work, which was a bummer, but we had a good time regardless. But did we even scout this year together? Did we just hang out? I don't even remember. Man, my memory's getting so bad.
Mm-hmm. No. Didn't we?
I think we just got together and podcast.
Yeah.
Just hung out. We maybe shot bows. I don't remember. Maybe in the backyard shot bows.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. This winter went fast.
I feel like this past year has just kind of been. Like, I don't really remember anything. Yeah,
because I transferred to the new job mid-January.
Yes.
So, yeah, we didn't. really do any scouting.
No, usually we always try to get together, and this year we just didn't. Well, part of it was too is my schedule was all. I don't even know. I was trying to think of this today because I was literally trying to jog my memory. It was like, when was the last time we hung out aside from like the party? And I was trying to remember that, and then I was also trying to remember, did we scout together? And I couldn't recall. And then it dawned on me that I was like, dude, hunting season is almost here, and it feels like we just kind of wrapped up last year.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
I'm so far behind on my deer items.
Are you really?
The trees, I literally have, I took the saddle on once. I'm like, man, I'm going to do 4 trees. 4 hours later, I'm still trying to find the right tree. Because I'm like, well, I had like 2 blowdowns, which jacked me all up. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. Then it's like, all right, you got to just relax, sit here, eat my snacks. Meanwhile, I got the dogs running around. I'm like, it was just not a very productive off season. I felt like I walked a lot, seen a lot, but I don't think I accomplished much.
So it's funny you say that because I feel like this year I didn't get to walk as much as I usually do. Because I try to
do your profit miles.
I literally do. Yeah. And it's not, I ain't competing with that guy. He or Ryan Glitsky, who you finally got to meet, my buddy. Those 2 dudes walk tons of miles, and I can't compete with either of them in mileage. But I do track them, and I want to say, I don't know, I missed some days of tracking, but I want to say I was like the 70 something mark or 80 miles, something like that. Now that's between scouting and hanging trail cameras and stuff like that. So, because I kind of count it all, because while I'm hanging trail cameras, I'm still kind of looking, you know.
Yeah. Always ABS, always be scouting.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like I got a fair amount of miles in, but it was just a really weird off season because I felt like I had a lot of so I'm a weekend warrior, like most people that listen to this, right? You know, I do get out and hunt during the week some, you know, because I have a flexible job, but by and large I do most of my damage on weekends still, and so my scouting especially, you know. And this year it just seemed like every weekend that I was trying to get out, I had bad weather, like, so it was pouring rain, because we had a really wet, like, late winter and spring, I felt like. And now it's like we would love to have some rain because it's not rained in forever. I'm like, man, why don't we have a couple more dry weekends in like March? You know, would be cool, and a couple of rainy ones in July. That'd be all right. And so it put me behind the 8 ball, because my plan was really to get up to the northern piece like later because it holds snow. Yeah, you know, and so I got screwed by that like the year prior, because I just didn't think about it and didn't realize how much longer it was going to hold snow. So I was like, you know what? Early winter, like right after the season, I'm going to jump into scouting. After take a little bit of time off, do some family stuff, blah, 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 blah. As soon as I hit that kind of end of February kind of time frame, I'm going to start really kind of scouting locally. Take me a couple weeks. I should get everything done that I want to get done. And then by the time like late March hits, maybe even beginning of April, I'll be able to go up to the North Piece, because all the snow will be gone, and I'll be able to kind of hit that for a couple weekends, and I'll be good. Well, it rained pretty much like all of March, it felt like. So it's like, you know what I mean? To where it's like I got like nothing done, and I really started like toward the end of March. And I didn't really, I found a couple new places, but nothing too crazy. But I feel like you, to where I really didn't, I learned a lot more about the spots I already kind of knew of. And I have a few flyer places that I'm interested to check cameras on, but haven't had a camera pull on any of those new places.
And like my wife will probably say that I was out in the woods a lot, but I feel, because usually I keep some type of journal or record. These last 2 years, I've just kind of been lazy on that aspect. Even like my daily journals. Once I went to the new job, like it's just like a ghost town. I was like, well, it's 4 months of my life, never happened. All right.
So I mean, I knew you journaled when you hunt.
Yeah.
And that's something I've picked up from you, because I started doing it. And it is super. I mean, I always knew kind of academically that it was helpful, but once I started doing it, man, I was able to really start to like connect dots a lot more quickly.
You check too with the wind, like the wind's calling for northwest. All right, the truck, you got a northwest. You get to your spots in north, and we're like, all right, well, why is that? You know, why is it blowing from the north? There's something there diverting the wind here, even though you get back to the truck, it's northwest.
Right.
There's little finite points of journaling, and now with everything's on your phone, which is nice.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a log book, even though I do like to write some stuff down.
Yeah, I don't write anything down.
I'm not fully digital yet.
Yeah, so I'm full digital. Everything lives like basically just in the Smart Forge app. I just use the journal feature on that, and I literally do it in the slow period while I'm in the tree. Mm-hmm. That way I don't forget. Because if I wait to do it after the hunt, unless something happens at the very end of the hunt that I need to capture, then I'll do it. And oftentimes it'll just be, one or two words for things like while I'm in the tree. Because I'll get there in the morning, and the first thing I'll do after kind of gray light comes by, and like you get that morning movement that should happen after that's kind of over, that's when I'll kind of bust out the phone and be like, all right, this is what the wind was doing whenever I came in. It's overcast, blah, blah, blah. Whatever like the environment is, I'll capture if I haven't seen anything. If I saw anything, I'll mark that. I'll mark what time, and then I'll just kind of go the rest of the hunt. And then as, the hunt kind of wraps up, I'll usually do it as soon as I get back to my truck and be like, all right, this was like the wrap up of the day. And if nothing else happens, then I'm done. Yeah. And then I'll go back in the off seasons, really when I start to look at it again and try to refresh my memory of like what happened. It actually has become part of my, like my postseason ritual, camera, like pictures and videos, go back and look at my journal entries, things like that, just to kind of re-jog my memory as to how things played out. And you start to pick up like where you screwed stuff up.
One thing I worked on this year is the entry and exits. So many spots, just because it's big woods, it's flat. You have to burn spots to get the spots. Yeah. And it's like, once I started pulling, like I said, I lost a few cameras, as usual, but the cameras I got are trash. So it's not exactly high def. And my little reader is trash. Mm-hmm. Basically, I don't really get good intel until I put on the computer. Right. And some spots I wrote off, man, it's like you look back. I sent you some of the pictures, like lurking in the laurels. You're like, holy smokes! If I would have deleted those things, but I don't do that anymore. I make sure I bring them home, and it's like, man, I was in it. But you look where the deer were coming from. I was like, that's where I would come from. Every time I sat there, I see nothing. Well, that's because I'm pretty much blowing out the deer walking in there. So now it's like some of the spots, it's like, I don't even know how I can get access to them unless I leave like the day before, because it's such a long ways around. It's like, it's almost impossible to get to. Not impossible. It's a very labor intensive walk. And anybody's hunting big woods, it's not a lot of deer to begin with, and it's thick. So it's like, that's a long, the one's probably, I know people say 2 miles. I'm probably 2 miles because the way I have to park and go all the way around. Mm-hmm.
And it's not 2 miles on on a track.
Yeah, 2 miles on laurels basically. So it's like walking on your hands and knees, and it's like, but that's what you got to do to kill these deer. And it's like the easy route is just not feasible in some spots. It's like the marsh, cattails and everything. You usually are the islands. Most of them you get by boat, or you can kind of get a better access route. It might be a long walk, but usually it's walk through a cut cornfield or beans or something. It's easy to get to, but some of those big woods, it's like, what do I get myself into?
Well, yeah, I noticed that whenever I was scouting that north piece, there were areas where I could look and go, man, I don't know what the habitat exactly looks like, just looking on a map or whatever, but I can look at it and go, man, that is so far away from like any easy access spot that if I truly wanted to just get away from people, like there's places to do that, right? And there was one spot that I was kind of eyeballing, and so I did the quick let's just like map a fictitious route just to see how long it would be to get there or whatever. And I want to say it was like 3 miles, and so I ended up making it back there to scout at one point during turkey season. Aaron Hepler I don't remember. Hep would keep me honest here. It was somewhere, I think it was like 2+ miles or whatever. But regardless, the round trip was going to be like 4+, whatever it was. And it was this swamp. And if people listen to the podcast we did there in turkey season, like then I got smacked in the eye with a branch, about lost an eye. And it's like, we just saw like no deer sign. Like, you know what I mean? And it was one of those things where it's like, well, we could go deeper and maybe we would find something better. But then I had to just be honest with myself and go, am I really going to hike 4 miles one way to go hunt.
Yeah.
Like to hunt what? Truthful answer? Nope. You know what I mean? Like,
That's like let me just wing it one day and hopefully it pays off.
right. Because, if I knew for sure there was a giant back there, would I go?
Yeah.
Probably. But what I'm getting on camera in that area has been pretty good. And everything that I have on camera, would satisfy me. You know what I mean? And do I think that there's like a 200-inch deer back there? Probably not. You know what I mean? Is there anything that's like way better than what I've been finding on camera?
Like for me, like I'd rather do 2 miles in like mountains or hill country, or mainly mountains. Like 2 miles in flatland is literally thick brush is like the worst.
Gnarliness, yes.
Yeah, it's like there's no like I don't get my heart rate up. Like there's no like ulterior motive to it. Like I get a workout in going up or downhill. It's like I'm just getting eaten alive by sticker bushes and mountain laurel. I'm like, great. And odds are I'm blowing out half the county because, well, you're making noise coming in those spots.
Right. Yeah. I will go many, many miles for elk.
Yeah.
I'm not doing like the 8-mile run, for whitetails. That's just me.
There's little things that you got to do to beat the crowd, especially, in a populated state. Like sometimes you got to do that. And I'll venture off like that spot where I had all those deer. I'm not going to give the time frames mid-November. So it's like I can go in there middle of October. I don't care because that buck ain't going to be in there anyway because I ran enough cameras in that place last year knowing that they don't exist in that section until it's go time. So it's like I'll wait to pencil a route in come October.
Right. Yeah. I mean, going back to talking about feeling like a little underprepared, it's weird because I've had my cameras out way early this year and had a lot of my scouting wrapped up to where I'm really not spending a whole lot of time in the woods right now, which is something that I'm appreciating. I know it's something that you've talked about. Actually, I think you even did a video on it on your YouTube channel, kind of talking about, well, I texted you whenever I knew you were going to come over and I was like, hey, what do we want to talk about? Is there anything that you have that's burning up that you've kind of been thinking about? And I forget exactly how you said it in the text, but it was something along the lines of like, more like long range scouting, and I don't want to say taking it easy, but I forget what the wording was. But it was basically like I'm not killing myself, right now. My approach now is like, how can I get smarter about what I'm doing and not necessarily have to spend all the time in the woods per se.
And that's when I was very efficient at killing many, it seems like a decade ago.
When I was just a young Greg.
When I was really like operating at my peak, I never scouted in summertime. John Eberhart, like when I read that's what he did, like very minimal scouting in summertime because you don't want to alert the deer to what you're doing. I don't want to alert the deer to what I was doing, but also at the same time, it's like, it's hot. I don't go in the woods. Right. Like I blew it out. All my trees were done. Now as I get older and family, like I don't have 2 days every weekend to spend in the woods or after work. So I was doing a lot of summer scouting in the last couple of years. I'm not really seeing the deer in October that I used to see. So I'm kind of going back to, I'll scout pretty much to now throw out some cameras or try to cut a track or something.
Right.
But a lot of my scouting is I'm glassing bean fields. Mm-hmm. Why I still can before they get too tall. Because Jersey's got a lot of hybrid beans. They get like 6 feet. Become like mid-August or about 5-6 feet. So a lot of deer are hidden. So I know what a big deer looks like this time of year. I have 3 that around me that if they start fill out, they're a possible target bucks. But I'm just glassing in a net, just driving down the road, glassing deer and walking the edge of the bean fields. Like, oh, there's a track. Mark it.
So you're using easy access places when you are going out, even and just trying to see like,
because they're coming to beans. Like there's no. I mean, it's a perk of farm country basically. So there's a lot of beans, a lot of corn. Can't really do much about the corn, but deer this time of year aren't really spending too much time in the corn because of their antlers. So they spend a lot of time in the beans. Well, I can just glass the last hour light, so I'm almost every day I'm glassing
probably
the last
even
hour
in some
light.
ways it's probably even better than camera inventory at that point. You know what I mean? As far as just like gathering inventory.
Yeah. And it's just like, no, all right, boom, there's 4 bucks over here, and there's one area that was I seen them like 3 weeks ago. I was like, man, these bucks might turn into something. They're nice deer, but nothing I'm going to waste my time in. In the spot, it's a huntable spot where they're coming out of. It's right in private, public, and nobody hunts there. But I got spots in there. There's just nothing worth shooting.
Right.
To me, it's like I walked the edge of the bean field. There's one big track, but it's a bigger body buck. There's a group of 4 bucks there. And it's like, So I'm literally just kind of just writing that spot off. I'm not even going to waste my time.
Right.
You know? And so it's like, all right, on to the next. I still drive by with a net so a net can see them.
Right.
But they're young. They're like clockwork. You know, it's like, boom, they're there almost every day.
7:15. Yep. Here they come.
I was like, the bigger guys, you know, and they don't mind the car stopping. I mean, they're like 300 yards away. They don't mind the car stopping. Any deer that's been around in Jersey, if you stop,
they're gone.
He's like, okay, I'm going back in the woods. These bucks are like, you ain't been around long enough. So
let me ask you this, dude, because, you know, I do a little bit of glassing around here. There's one spot I really can't hunt. It's more I just like to go watch. If I have a free Saturday evening after I get done mowing the grass and stuff like that, it's like I might take a coldie over there and sit on the bed of my pickup with a spotter, you know, and just watch bucks come out. You know, last year I saw a good one over there, but I can't hunt it. Or anything even close to
it's good to watch behavior too from those
Well, that's
spots.
what I like to do. Yeah.
See what they do, how they come in. What's the wind doing? Why is it coming in?
There's
the
always
air?
something to learn and pick up. You know what I mean? But I wanted to ask you, because there are a couple places, you know, they're not even really local, but that I'm aware of that has some public that has some bean fields, and they flip flop, and this year they're beans, but it's not adjacent to where I can hunt and where I have hunted in the past. And so I guess my question is, I'm always kind of curious, like how far away is I'm trying to figure out how to ask this correctly. What is the furthest distance that you would look at a primary food source like a bean field and say, yes, there is a good chance still that the deer that I'm seeing are using the public that I have access to hunt?
In Jersey, speaking of those 4 bucks, they're coming out and they're going across a hayfield that they just cut down to the beans, the only patch of beans, and they're traveling 300. They're day walking 300 plus yards to get to the beans.
Right.
You know, and so I think relatively close. I still think just, especially like I said, if you stop in Jersey, even slow down, even the older does are like, I'm out. You know, like they know what's up. You know,
right.
They've been shot at, you know, or whatever. So if they got to do a lot of walking in a busy road, I think they're going to just not, expose themselves too much.
Right. Because while we're talking, I'm actually going to pull up the map and show you where I'm actually talking about, because it's
But like I said, beans are key. I mean, that's talking to Todd, you know, the UP bow hunter. I'm hunting with him and stuff like that. Like beans, the first 2 weeks of the season are just phenomenal, but then you get the oaks start dropping, and then the beans are basically duds.
right.
You know, if you got oaks dropping, you know, they'll still come to their beans, but it's a hit or miss.
Yeah, so here's a spot, and sorry for folks listening, like you can't see what we're looking at.
You can't see this map? Come on.
You can't see this map. So here, I've glassed this field in the past, right? And actually, I jumped that big deer that I knew of, I guess 2 seasons ago that I knew of from glassing, and I ended up jumping him like the opening day or whatever. So my assumption was he was bedded back here, and this is where I found him bedded. That's probably 400, 500 yards away, maybe.
The only beans, yeah.
That's the only beans, and what my assumption was like all these hedgerows and stuff that are around here, like those were going to bed up in that, which means the next best bedding was going to be back in here for the bucks, and that was exactly where I bumped them. So would you say like 400 or 500 yards is reasonable? I mean,
probably, yeah. I mean, especially if it's a good bean field, you know.
And it's the only game in town, potentially.
They're gonna
really,
go.
that spot right there, there's one other spot that's not far from that.
Especially I look at, and you're a kind of populated area, kids playing, like they don't want to be disturbed.
Right.
You know, so some of them hedgerows and light fields, you probably got kids playing people's backyards. So they're going to, get away from those spots, dogs, they don't want to be bothered.
Right.
So if that's a safe bedding, then I could see him doing that.
Right.
Especially he's been around the block. Like he feels as older deer, they're kind of stuck in their ways. Like,
Yeah.
I like this spot. I'm gonna keep bedding here.
Yeah, yeah, and it was one of those things too where you could tell, like, I mean, he was a older deer. He was not only did he have antler size, he just had body size. Like that was the first thing I noticed when I drove by because I wasn't even planning to glass. I was just driving, and I was driving by and I just saw a couple deer out, and I just kind of looked, and I just saw like a huge body deer, and I was like, whoa, that's a big deer. And I stopped, and he popped his head up, and I was like, whoa. I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah,
I was like, all right.
You see him without binoculars,
Yeah, I saw him. I knew
300 yards. You can see, if you see antlers, that's a big deer.
Yeah, and he was a no doubter from that far away. And so it started changing my mind a little bit about, because before that I really never did a lot of glassing, and that experience actually changed my mind because I was always like, man, there's nothing close to where I hunt that is actually a primary food source, or if there is, it's nothing of any significant size that I can glass, or it's just not going to draw enough deer. It's a waste of my time.
It's not like Western PA. You got the big 30, 40,000 acre tracts of, timber with clear cuts and browse. Here you got small little woodlots, brushy, some green briars, but beans, they're going to go to it. They're going to get fat while they can.
Yeah. And so when I saw that, that's when I was like, all right, I was like, maybe I need to start, even if it's not adjacent to, I need to start to try to pick out, what is a food source that's a mile away.
Yeah.
That maybe I have to drive a mile, but if I end up cutting through like a bunch of little woodlots and stuff, if I was a deer, I might only be 500, 600 yards away, and that's walkable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For me. So,
and especially there's bigger woodlots like the map you're showing. The small hedgerows, there's no oaks. So come hunting season,
they ain't in there.
Yeah, they're not in there. So they might be hanging out in the summertime, but as soon as the oaks start dropping, mid-September, you know where they're going to be.
Right.
They transition to, hard mast.
Right.
And get into their October zone.
Right. So with your kind of old man style preparation,
save myself,
saving yourself. What else are you doing for that? I mean, so you're doing a lot of long range kind of glassing, and that's something that Tony Peterson does a lot of too. Like he's big. He's big on that.
Growing up, that's what I did a lot of, and I just get away from it, and I mean, there's no excuse. I've just been lazy. I'll admit it. I need to work on that. Get back on what worked for me. And have my spots dialed in, and like the big wood section I'm talking about here. Those little moments in time, I guess, where it was a good area to hunt. I'm already going to hunt those certain days in there. I'm not going to waste my time hunting October 6th in there because it was very sporadic. Right. I have better spots. Like I'll go hunt in March because it's more consistent.
Right.
I know what they're going to be doing that time frame. They're going to be pushing these certain islands. I can walk. I'm like, all right, there's oaks here. All right, that fields grew up. They might come into that. So I'm going to be better at strategizing my year, my 6 months I can hunt in New Jersey.
Right.
And hunt each spot for the best chance at killing a deer.
Right. And that's something that I've talked about a good bit. I think you and I have even talked about it before too. Is just kind of once I started focusing more on dates than I did anything else, that was when I started really seeing my the efficiency of my hunts increase. You know what I mean? Where it's like I started having more encounters on fewer sits. And it's funny because the podcast I just put out with Dr. Strickland from MSU Deer Lab, we talked. It was all about buck bedding and what they found in like their preliminary research and stuff like that. And we talked a little bit about hunting dates, and he was just like, "That is so true." He was like, when you find a repetition, like a pattern around areas, he's like, it could be related to a number of things. He's like, but if that variable produces over and over, year over, he was like, you can anticipate seeing the same deer or the same type of activity.
Yes.
So regardless of whether it's a scrape or if it's like a consistent food source that's going to turn on the same time every year, like, he's like, those are types of things you can start to set your watch to.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm not telling any tales out of school here that you don't know, and a lot of people who listen to this don't already know. but especially around the does and the biology related to that and scrapes. It's like if that happens, you can see it happen twice. Pretty good chance you're going to have a pretty consistent kind of
trail camera data, and anybody's been running cameras for any length of time, but even 3 years, you've literally, I never had that growing up. Like you can, your learning curve is just it's off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
You can run camera 3 to 5 years, you pretty much know what's going to happen year in, year out in that section of woods. Because in a 5-year stretch, you've hit the weird, crazy weather. The most likely a doe coming heat early or coming late. Like 5-year stretch, you've hit it all. Cold, heat at certain times, especially if you run the cameras like year round.
Yeah,
you pretty much know exactly what's going to happen in an area, and I think you see it because you see a lot more bigger deer getting killed by decent hunters. Maybe not great hunters, just decent hunters. People that just capitalize on those dates.
Right. How long would it take for you to see something play out, regardless of what it is? Let's say something happens, like you start to see some like consistency, right? Or let's even make it narrower. You notice around a specific time period, like a 3-day period or 4-day period, or maybe it's even a week long, outside of like rut time period. Because to me, that's whenever it makes more sense to me. Like when I see sporadic stuff happen during that like classic rut time frame, it's like, man, I would have to see that happen multiple years before I would ever say that is something that I could like hang my hat on. But it becomes a little bit more obvious when it's in that October time frame, right? Because they're not on the full out like let's get crazy and just run all over the place kind of mode yet. So if you see something on camera for 1 year, right? So let's say you go back and you look at trail camera inventory and there's like a spot that turned on for like, when I say turned on, doesn't mean like a scrape turned on, but just like the activity was noticeably increased for a 5-day period, right? And let's say maybe it's bucks and does, right? And that probably has a little bit to do with what you would think it might be, right? And then it kind of goes back to normal, right? How long would you have to observe that? Like say like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
I would think
to say like that's something I can hang my hat on, or is it dependent on the variable that you'd have to find that was driving the activity?
I would say 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5?
Yeah. 1 year, 2. But if that time frame corresponds with the data you've already had, years past, and you can start to put, like, all right, well, my date in October.
Yeah.
So it's like that date in October works wherever I've been. It's like, it's just a great time to be in the woods. Don't matter where I'm hunting. Yeah. So, and that was from just trial and error, years of hunting in those days. It's like, wow, I'm seeing a lot of bucks. Why? Don't know.
It's like, then all of a sudden truck came and you're like, oh, there you go.
Yeah. And then so you're like, okay, those dates are very consistent. So, I was at the Michigan TAC. There's some hardcore people in Michigan, man.
For sure, man. Dude, tons of people from Michigan listen to this. Dude, shout out to everyone from Michigan, man. You guys are killers.
Dude, straight gangsters, man. They live and breathe hunting. And I talked to probably a handful of guys, and they correspond with my thoughts on the mid-October movement. They're like, dude, every year I can count on it. It's like clockwork. Somewhere on that property, this is going to happen. I'm like, I know, right? And he goes, and the one guy's like, I hunted those days because you told me those dates. So he goes, and I see deer. He goes, and it here, and then it's gone. There's a 3 or 4 day window, and then it disappears, and then there's a 7-day lull, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And then and the funny thing is so I mean, you and I are obviously really good friends, and you kind of told me about that, and so I started just paying attention to it, and then started hunting days in and around that. And then what I layered on top of that, and what I've kind of learned, at least for me, and I don't know that it holds true. It's like, and you tell me how you feel about it, but to me, it's like there is increased movement in that time frame, because I'm not going to mention the dates anymore. We've mentioned them a couple of times, and I'm like, I don't
go back and do research.
I don't want people going into the woods at the same time. But
October 10th.
Yeah. People listen to this now are MFing us right now. Like, you guys are a bunch of assholes. October 10th is the date. But what I started kind of layering on top of that in understanding, and you tell me if you think this is accurate, if you think of it the same way. The way I think about it is that yes, there is increased movement around there, but it's going to be in very specific spots, very specific locations. It's not going to be like I can walk. It's not going to be like the rut.
Yeah.
And that I think is like what some folks maybe misunderstand when we have talked about that date in the past, where they're like, oh, it flips on. It's like, no, you've got to know where it's going to happen because it's going to happen like in a very kind of narrow area, and you might be 50 yards away, 40 yards away, and you won't even know it's happened. You know, because it's not going to be like running all over the place. It's going to be a mature deer for that area is going to slip up and make his first mistake of the year that time whenever he's not expecting to be intercepted.
Yes.
Because he's been kind of left alone to that point.
And it's a very deliberate movement.
Yes. You know, that is a great way to put it. It's very deliberate.
He's very deliberate at what he's doing. He's looking for food, does, and where humans could possibly be, you know, whatever it might be. I do believe like some bucks are more prone to finding out where humans are. You know, I think they like figuring, some bucks like to try to figure
hunt
us out.
Just like we're hunting them. Yeah.
And I think it's super deliberate. And like you said, if you're not in it, you might as well not even be in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why people think, I mean, when they start talking about the lull and stuff like that, it's like, you know, again, this is stuff that people kind of have come to understand. It's like they're still moving, but you know what Greg and I are talking about is that if you've watched a spot long enough and you've got enough data on it, it doesn't matter what deer gets killed, what deer doesn't get killed. You can set your watch to that spot year over within a 3-day window.
Yes.
And it could be it starts 3 days earlier than it did last year or 3 days later than it did last year, but it's always going to be around that time frame. And that's, you know,
it can be weather dependent. You get a heat wave in there, it stifles deer movement, you know, or if you get a cold front, say, you know, October 15th, that throws everything in
or
a
you get the
tailspin.
wrong wind or whatever the case is. You know, because last year was I think it was a day early last year. And the reason being is I just got the right wind that day. You know, it's like I was watching it. You know, I actually had a cell camera in there because I know, and I got another piece of data this year. I don't even know if I told you this.
Oh.
I mentioned it on the podcast. So if you've heard it, if you haven't heard it, then I know you don't listen to the show. No, I'm just kidding. So that one spot that I've had that's been year over, I kind of knew what date it was, and I've hunted that date 2 years in a row, and I've had good action both years, and should have killed that one deer this year. I don't want to talk about that anymore. But I had a hypothesis as to why this was happening because I knew that this particular like community scrape was heating up, right? But the way the activity was playing out, I was like, it's not just like the one mature deer showing up. I was like, I'm getting more than that, and I'm like, man, I feel like there's a warm doe in here, but it's way early for that, right? So I was watching this year, and in the past 2 years, I would see fawns, but they were like the normal time frame, right? And when I would see them, they would be big enough to where I'm like, well, I can't really backdate now because like I didn't see them in the first couple of days. You know, you could tell that they were 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it was, far enough out that it's like, well, it's probably just around the normal breeding date. You know, I literally saw a fawn drop where the thing looked like it could fall over from a stiff wind. Like, I mean, we're talking most days old, if that. And I was able to backdate from that day by like basically subtract like a day or two from it because you're probably not seeing it the day of, you know, and then backdate your 200 days or whatever. And it lands exactly on that date in October that I've been targeting and hunting around. So my hypothesis was I have to have a doe that comes in early here, you know.
And
it ended up being true.
Yeah, and historically, if doe comes in the heat, from what I've read and understand, they're very consistent. And within a few days, you know, barring, you know, no stress and stuff like that. Like, if you get an area that's popping off at, say, October 15th every year, give or take a few days, it's going to be October 15th every year.
And it would be interesting, too, because there would always be that one, like, mature deer that was showing himself each year around the time frame that I was getting the activity in the days that I had the encounters. But there was also like this weird, and what made me think of that there's got to be a doe that's coming in early in here. I just haven't been able to see the fawn drop on camera to know, to be able to backdate to the date. But it was always, it would heat up. So I would all of a sudden start seeing like does hitting this scrape. And then I'd all of a sudden start seeing some like one or two like young bucks hitting it, like just way more regular than they typically were hitting this primary scrape outside of the rut or outside of pre-rut, you know? And I was like, man, there's got to be a doe that's heating up in here because there's just way too much activity. And sure enough, you know, that's what it was.
Speaking of fawns, I pulled camera. I set out of the big woods. It was December 4th. I had a spotted fawn with a doe in December.
Oh, wow. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. Late. Yeah. Right before shotgun season. So right around that time frame.
Dang.
And people were like, no. I was like, yeah. And I got her quite a bit, her and the mama. Big old single doe, but spotted fawn. I'm like, whoa.
That's a crazy late drop
yeah.
there.
And I'm like, oh, okay. That's weird. Like, and we had a pretty cold winter, so I was like, hopefully I think made it, you know, because it got cold in January. We had a lot of snow.
Yeah.
We had a big snowstorm in January. Hopefully it made it, but I just thought that was odd. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen them in like mid-October, late October, but never pushing December.
Right.
You know, and it was a pretty good sized fawn, still had spots, you know, but I'm
Right.
like, wow. So that thing must have been born in like that
Jeez.
spots, like beginning of bow season, you
Yeah,
know, like,
crazy
October.
late.
Yep. End of October, the thing was born or something. The bees.
That's like some Florida stuff or like Alabama stuff there. I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, I'm not banking on finding early does at every spot that I have.
Well,
I mean, the good news about that place is that when you do find something like that, and that's why like these dates are important when you observe and you see things consistently on these dates, especially if it's in and around where you know there's like known doe beddings, because those doe family groups are going to keep that estrus date because it's going to be passed from mom to daughter, from that fawn to the next fawn. And as long as that doe family group doesn't move away, that spot will keep its dates intact.
October, I think 10th, I had $4 or $5 on this doe. October 10th. I mean, she came by the camera, you know, tongue hanging out, and it was just like doe bucks, boom, 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 you know. And the oldest one, the biggest mature one, I would shot that deer if I could, but I couldn't. He's just a big 4-pointer, you know, old gray face, you know. He had to jump over this log, and you can see him like he struggled to get over the log. Like he was like old, but he was like bringing up the rear. But it's like she came by. She was a younger doe, and she came by like tongue hanging out, like they've been chasing her all night. That was October 10th last year. They're right around that weird early full moon that we had. And
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, all right. There's a lot of these things. That's why I think getting back to the camera data thing, I think a 3 to 5 year is necessary, because you get them flyers you got to just take out. You know, you can't, you know, have good data points with the extremes. They got to be tossed out. You know, and you get kind of a baseline.
Right, exactly. You can't observe like that a date for a year. Like to me, the first time I saw it, it piqued my interest because there was so much activity in the spot. And you got to use a little bit of your intuition, because there's places like that I've had as I'm investigating the new north piece or whatever, that I'm finding some consistency. Like, so there's a spot, and I showed you the videos of those deer.
The big six.
Yeah. Your Moby Dick.
Yes.
You know, where I was like, man, there's a lot of like activity or concentrated around this 3-day period. It's enough for me to go, I need to watch this, because if I can watch this happen next year, I'm going to feel pretty good about it. If I see it for 2 more years, then to me, it's a slam dunk. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I can count on that spot year over year. It's going to be good within that couple day window or whatever.
This spot in Allegheny, the same thing. With Johnny and the camera, what he sees, what I see in camera over a couple years. It's like there's a 3-day window. It's, if you're in the right spot, it's big boys are making mistakes, but you have to be in the right spot.
And I want, I guess, folks that are listening to know too, that it's like, it doesn't always have to be scrape driven. It just so happens to be the ones that I have found, and they're probably the easiest to find, because there's a big scrape. It's right there, a big primary scrape.
Magnum
like,
scrapes.
Yeah, like let me watch and see if this thing heats up outside of the time frame that I think is typical, right? That pre-rut time frame. Is there increased activity that's early or whatever, right? But it's also, if you see something pick up on a camera, it could be food based. It could be like all of a sudden there's a tree that you weren't aware of that's dropping or whatever, and then it becomes defining what that variable is, and then understanding how consistent is that variable going to be, right? So if it's like, let's say it's a big woods piece that doesn't have a ton of oaks, which is what I hunt in one area, and you find a lone oak, it's like, well, that's awesome, but this year it might be killer. Next year it might not be. And so you still got to do your homework and know, like, is this a year that I can count on that thing dropping? And then you also have to think, well, how consistent is the activity actually going to be? Because that's not so consistent, not very consistent. Are deer actually going to be in and around it often enough in order for it to actually be a factor early?
And I think that's it's super important, food based in all areas, really. Even with the ag, you got the ag shifts, or they plant something different. You go from beans to corn, and then one year just might be hay. That's going to change, what activity you're going to get in that area. That's why I think, the time frame, you need 3 to 5 to get a fully grasp what's happening.
Right.
You get a better understanding, I should say.
Right. So how are you feeling about your upcoming season? Like, I guess, how your plans shaping up? Like,
Totally unprepared.
Yeah. Going back to that.
It's it was mentally, like, I'm good. Like, I said, kind of going back, and I got my cameras out in the woods. I'll put some more come, October in certain spots, but I'm going to get back to what I cut my teeth in, is hunting just hot sign. Like, I'm going to just get my way in and hunt, work them edges. You look for cutting big tracks. If I'm walking down, say, edge of a swamp or edge of a bean field that's starting to turn yellow come, mid-September. If I'm not seeing any big tracks, I'm not even going to waste my time. Right. I'll just go home, save, or go scout another piece real fast, speed scouting. So I'm going to just not be so, rigid, and I got to kill a deer in the big woods. I'm going to kill a big deer wherever I can kill a big deer. Right. And if there is no big deer there, or mature deer, or if I don't see a deer or something that gets me excited, like big track, it might be a tinker, but it could be a tank of a body. I'm shooting it.
Right.
Like if it's a deer's 200 pounds dressed, like, I don't care if it's a 6-pointer, basket rack 6, or got soda can base is little, I'm shooting it.
Right.
Because to be that big, it's going to require age, and
right. Going to be smart.
He doesn't want to kill a big deer.
Right. Yeah.
A 200-pounder, there's not many 200-pound bucks getting killed in Jersey every year. So if I can kill one 200 pounds on the hoof, then
get that sled to work, son.
Exactly.
Man, you mentioned, when October rolls around, you'll, get some like your additional cameras out aside from like your inventory cameras and stuff like that. And I know, we have a lot of the same kind of trail camera strategies as far as,
you're on different levels. Trail camera guru.
Easy there.
In a decade of running cameras off and on, I might have 116th deer. You get that every year. So
I learned from Chad, so I don't know, maybe that Ohio big buck savvy wore off on me. I just need to get arrows through them. It seems like I do an okay job finding them, but what I was saying was we have a lot of the same strategy where even like this time of year, even if it's inventory, like we still have a fair amount of cameras that are set up on scrapes and stuff like that. And I think I was doing this kind of like naturally, and then I saw you did a video on it, which I thought was really kind of interesting, which was using trail cameras to tweak spots.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how you do that, because I think a lot of times people use camera just to kind of see like what the deer is doing, and if they use it even more as a tool, they're then using it to like better understand how the deer is traveling, not just that like, oh, I got a picture of a deer. Yeah, you start to ask questions about it. And then I think the next step beyond that is like you now start answering those questions and making plays, like not just like, oh, it's this date and this wind. It becomes, well, how do I actually set up without ever going back into scout and I can tell this from this picture or from this video, and I know now how I need to change my setup.
Yeah, it's, if you're using cameras just for the picture, I think you're kind of missing
the boat.
Yeah, we like the pictures. They're great, that video is cool and all, but you need to look at when you're seeing these deer, what time of year you're seeing them, what the wind's doing, pressure, count everything, look at the human side. That spot that I made the video on is the deer. I made a video on it, I think the year prior in big scraping area. Well, all the oaks were dropping in it's all laurel, and there's little open spots where oaks are dropping. And the year before, there was probably a dozen scrapes, magnum scrapes, like everything. You're like, man, this place is going to be awesome. Well, I put the camera, early October, checking on the 23rd, it's like a ghost town. Scrapes are getting worse, but not really. There's random scrapes here and there. So I kind of wrote the spot off, and then put the SD card in the computer, realized it was like, wow, I kind of missed the boat on this one. The deer were still coming through there. They're just staying a little bit thick cover. All the oaks, were dropping behind me. So the bucks were pretty much just circling downwind of the oaks, before they went out in the feed.
Right.
So all the scrapes were in the oaks where the food was.
Right.
They're still cutting across this little, dense laurel. That's anything open, deer. It's like a magnet. Deer will roll through there. So that camera was like, all right, put it on there. It was like, all these deer still coming through here. Well, my original spot, how I would set up on it when it was scrapes, I thought I had a banger spot. No, all of them deer were literally coming right where I had to walk in through. So I'm like, well, this kind of stinks because it's a setup for northwest wind. I go back at the camera data and start looking at it, and it's like that last week of October, it's like we had west winds, south, north. It was doing everything. The deer didn't even care. They're coming right through there. So it's like, all right, well, now I know.
Especially when you got a spot like that, if they're going to use no matter what, it's like, and you can hunt on any wind. You just got to. It's making sense to me.
Yeah.
Now.
So it's like, all right, all this stuff, and I'm a little slow in my old age, I guess. So it takes a while for the things to kick in. It's like, like I started looking at it. I'm like, man, I can go hunt here in the west and south and pretty much come in and out, almost like backdoor this thing, because behind me is big open hardwoods, and a bunch of guys always hunt the dog shit out of it because it's open. They can see 100 yards. I'm in laurel, so like I'm just on the edge of just little pockets, 25 feet up. I can shoot in all day long. So next year, if there's oaks are right here, they're gonna be banger scrape. I can get in and get out. So I took all that data and information I had and was went there. I'm like, all right, west and a southerly based spot. That's it. So that spot only serves two wind directions. So north, I'm just blowing out, getting into it. So it's pointless. As good as a spot as it is, it's not. You can't kill deer in the wrong wind. They're going to ground scent. I'm going to make noise getting in there, and where this deer are coming from is how I was actually accessing to get in there. Like, oh, this would be a great spot, northwest. I can come in this way. I'm pretty much walking right where the deer are walking, because it's like there's trails, but the deer can just kind of filter through because it's really thick. So there's really no rhyme or reason. They're just kind of coming through an area.
Right. That's it. I mean, that's like that's kind of putting all the pieces together where you're like using the trail camera data as like, there's something amiss here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's, it sends off your spidey senses. Like, I'm not getting something because I'm seeing deer here, but when I go there, it's like a freaking ghost town.
Yes.
That should be like the first sign. Right.
And that was a lot of last year. Like, I was in the right spot, but I'm not seeing deer. Cameras were like, well, they're coming through here. It's like, anybody that hunts hill country mountains, they're like creek bottoms. Everybody gets daylight pictures of deer walk through creek bottoms all the time.
Hard to hunt.
Hard to hunt. When you hunt there, I don't see any deer. Well, they're smelling you. The reason you're seeing deer because you're not in the woods there hunting at those spots.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was literally I was talking. So I had Justin Hollinsworth on a couple weeks ago or whatever. Dude kills magnums. And we were going to, we had a phone call the other night because on that north piece, and he's just a killer, and I like to get different guys' perspectives, and he's, as smart and as strategic a hunter that you'll find. Like, he finds a big deer and he's like, I'm going to extract this deer, and that deer's days are usually numbered sometime in October, and that's just all there is to it, And so we were texting back and forth, sharing some information, stuff like that. And I was like, I sent him a picture of like the one deer that I had on camera that I'd sent you, and it's like, he's a hammer,
Yeah.
you know. He was just like, that's a mature deer,
Right.
man. He's like, you need to
Horse head.
Yeah, he's like, you need to figure that guy out, you know. And I was like, man, I'd love to get your take on this and kind of give you a little bit of information about where he's at, where I'm seeing a bunch of sign around where he's at, like what I found during scouting and stuff like that. So we had a quick phone call this past week and just kind of talked about it. And there's a spot that has a creek bottom that's there. And I was like,
Creek bottom or creek bottom?
I say creek bottom. So I don't know. I don't know what the right way is to say it. I don't say creek. Like, I say creek bottom. I'm from like central toward the west of PA. We say creek and we say water. You know, it's like, so whatever. We ain't drinking any of your water and I ain't walking through any of your creeks. All right. So so he and I were talking about it, and I said all the best sign that I found is around that bottom. I was like, it makes sense, like, because there's a point that's coming off this mountain down to that bottom, and I can see where deer kind of meander down through there, and there's a bench that goes around it, and Aaron and I hung a camera on a scrape that was on that bench, and where we're getting pictures of this one deer at this moment is about 40, 50 yards away from these two big beds we found at the top. He's not quite on the top yet. And then I have a camera that's down below that on the one side of the mountain, and that we get, I'm sure that deer's on that camera too, because I get a ton of pictures on that camera, and there's a big scrape that's there. They hit all year round. And what I was talking, when Justin and I were talking, I was like, I feel like the best opportunity to kill, whether it's that deer or a good buck in that general area, I was like, I feel like is that bottom, because I feel like they feel like they're bulletproof in there, because whenever I was in there, I was wind mapping it, and like my thermals were just getting sucked down to the stream and zipping right down the stream. I was like, now I know I would need to stay kind of close to the stream, but the nice thing is that you can just kind of quickly cross it. Yeah. And I can come in perpendicular, you know, to it, to where I can basically just cross the stream and like 30 yards up the embankment, and I'm in the tree, you know. I have to play it like, so it's the old saying, like, you're not going to get everything you want. You got to give something up. You know what I mean? So my options are this. My options are to hunt that spot that I marked that tree, you know, and I know kind of where I want to get to. Or I could hunt on the back side of that embankment and hunt off the ground and stay kind of tucked in. And know that I'm pretty much going to be pretty well bulletproof, because nothing's going to really get behind me and walk that lip that kind of goes along the rim of the creek. You know what I mean? Because there's a kind of an embankment that goes down. I'm likely not going to be down there. If they are, they're going to cross, and they're going to cross right by me. So that's option number one. Option number two is I get in closer to where all the scrapes are at, which I can see some of the scrapes, but I can move a little further down and get in the shit. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to have a little less control over my wind at that point, because we all know what happens when you get into bottoms, right? You're going to get a lot of swirl. Wind's going to change on you. And the one thing that would be saving me in the other spot is that I'm getting enough thermal draw from that stream that, even because when I was in there, it was late morning. It was probably like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So there was enough sun on the ground, you know, and it was.
Is that full shade even at the peak of sunlight?
So the creek bottom is, yes, because like the creek is lined with hemlocks. And so as soon as you pop up out of the hemlocks, it gets all nasty, brushy. Yeah. And there's just like this one little open space right along the edge of it is where I kind of marked a tree to get into, because I was like, man, I can. And there's a deer trail that's coming out of that, headed into all those scrapes and stuff. And I was like, well, I can either get in the stuff, and in October, I was like, I don't think I'm going to have very good shooting in there, even if I get near any of those scrapes. I was like, so I almost feel like I'd be better off playing the edge of that on them coming in or out, and staying close to those hemlocks to where I can still work that cooler air behind me, no matter what time of day it is, because it's going to be 5 degrees cooler in there than it is going to be out in front of me. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of my thinking. And what he had kind of mentioned, he had a similar spot like that there was one spot similar to that, to where he was like, Andre was actually hunting it too for years, or knew of it for years. He's like, there's a huge primary scrape. They've known it for 25 years. No one's ever killed a deer there. He's like, because you couldn't hunt it. Then he found another spot, not the same place, but like in another state, that was very similar, but he had one bulletproof setup that he could hunt in that spot. He's like, I could go to that year over year He's like, and big deer would walk by me and have no clue I was there. So how would you hunt that spot? Now I've kind of given you, I think I've shown you this on the map too, and I've kind of given you the lay of the land. Like, what would your approach be?
I would, if you're, it's one of those things because October, it's kind of hard to mimic the temperatures that you're going to get in October, unless you're going in like maybe like March.
Well, that's when that's the one part I left out, right? Yeah. It was like when I went in there, and it wasn't on purpose. It just so happened to get like, it was when I was free to be able to go. Yeah. It just so happened that the temps ended up being like that, like normal early-ish October kind of time frame, where the high was like 64, that day or something.
It gets cold at night still. It's getting down to, sub-freezing almost,
Yeah, I mean, that night it was like 32 or something like that, or 35, 36, something like that.
Mimic the temperature swing, sit and just go through like 8 milkweed pods, get a good understanding what the wind's going to do. And then at that spot, I would never hunt low. I'm not a big fan of that personally. I know there's people out there that do it. I've never had much success doing it. I'll see deer, but I'm not killing them. And that's, I don't see many big deer begin with every year. The last thing I need to do is say, hey, look, there's a shooter. Hey, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for wagging your tail at me. Yeah.
Thanks for giving me nightmares for next year.
So let me ask you this. Would you get in the shit and risk it knowing that the wind...
No, I'd go up high.
You would go up to that edge that I talked about and get in that tree.
I would get super aggressive on that because it's a one and done spot. It sounds like, so get in as aggressive as you can.
Right.
And if you might not see any deer, but you're going to learn a lot about that spot.
Right.
And if the conditions are right, you can sneak back out and maybe get another crack. Like if you're not crossing deer trails, I mean,
Yeah, so I'm not going to cross any deer trails. So this is my thinking. I'm going to hunt it like you just said. Like I'm going to hunt the high spot. Yeah. I'm going to climb.
Start high and work down low.
Right. As high as I can. I got 30 feet of rope, so I'll probably start pretty close to that. Yep. It sucks for the shot angle, but the one thing is I don't want to get blown out there.
Yes.
Because I'm crossing water to get there, and it's so close to coming out of the water.
Yep.
That, I mean,
your ground sense minimum.
Next to nothing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And if the thermal will work there like it did whenever I was there hanging cameras and was watching my milkweed just suck down that stream or along the stream's edge, then that spot would be bulletproof to where as long as I don't have a real shitty wind, I could probably hunt it, and I could probably hunt it basically up until I would get busted because the access is bulletproof.
And that's where you're going to win in those strategies. Anybody that's, the Miles Killer, back in the day, I grew up reading him, and I mean, Andy May just had a post about this. He's hunting that off wind, deer's coming in and it's like, you're just on the cusp of getting busted. The wind could shift for a second, your opportunity's gone, but that's the only spot you're going to get to shoot that deer.
Right.
And you got to get aggressive, any big buck killer. And it's not being reckless. It's just being aggressive. I need to get.
What the risk is going in. You didn't do it because you didn't know. You did it because it's what I need to do in order to make this happen. And I know.
And you might hunt that spot and buck comes out and it's a dinker. Mm-hmm. That could be just how that you're coming out of bedding. He might not be bedding that spot. Well, if that deer, then you can watch that deer or does come out. Like you can see what they're doing. Like pull the milkweed out as it's happening. You're like, all right, northeast. This seems to be phenomenal, between the wind and the thermal pool. Like northeast, I can hunt this 3 days in a row as long as I got a northeast wind, because the deer are just kind of going down that milkweed.
God, I would love it if that's the case in that spot, because that's one of those big wood spots there where it's like a lot of people in the big woods. I feel like a lot of people move too often, too quickly. There's something to be said
cycles,
for
man. It's every 3 or 4 days they're back in that area, so you can hit there and be like. Nothing came out.
Yeah, if I could hunt that spot for 3 days straight, that would be. I wouldn't hunt it any more than that, but 3 days would be like.
And it's good
if you could stay clean for that long, it'd be. I feel like you would have you would see.
And sometimes
you would learn a lot. If
and
not
sometimes you need to hunt a spot like that you hunt it on your good wind. Like, all right, this is it. Northeast, you get there and it's like, man, Northeast is terrible. Your weekend's kind of destroyed anyway. You can't hunt on Sunday in PA.
Right.
Lord knows why, but I would stick around on Sunday and hunt it again. Oh, the wind's gonna be north, or anytime you can get in there. You're just to see what your wind's going to do. You know,
Right. Yeah. I mean,
the,
just even if you just walked in, set up,
Yeah.
got into a tree, and just because your weekend
can-
shot anyway, it's like you can't hunt, but you can still go observe.
Yep. And you
know?
can film, you can do all this stuff, you can learn, you know, and it's like, I think a lot of people want, and it might take you 3 years to tweak that spot. You might need to go 5 yards here, 6 yards there. Like, I mean, hunting in the mountains.
Well, you also might want to think about how much further can I move up the embankment before I lose my thermal
Yep.
advantage.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And you watch what those deer do. Like it could be a spot that requires you 2 years, couple sits a year. Like, all right, I got it now. Like this is where it's going to be. You know,
Right.
You know, because bigger buck, if he smells you there, you know, it's a very set populated state. You know, he smells human signs. You know,
Yeah.
he's probably gone for the year. You know, or a few weeks. But all right. Well, give it a month. Go back and set it again another time. You know,
Right.
Even set it in a winter bow, whatever, and just see where you can get in and what you can get away with.
Right.
And sometimes it requires like pushing an envelope. Like, man, I can get here, and then you realize like I can even get closer. The thermal pull's great with a stiff wind. I'm 30 feet up. You know, I got a 20-mile-an-hour wind. Dude, I'm golden. Like I can get in there. You know, I can get in a little more.
God, I would
aggressive.
love like a stiff, like 13-mile-per-hour wind in that spot.
Just a steady wind.
Yeah, just something I could count on. You know what I mean? Like that's what I don't want in that spot
Or going there.
is light and variable.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
We're going there with them drizzly, rainy days.
oh
Yeah, you sneak in there and be like, all right, your initial setup, I'm
Well,
sitting there.
the stream too, as close as it is, like it's a little bit maddening. Like I love hunting near streams because I can get away with some wind stuff near them, and I
some
can get away with
noise.
some noise. But the part that drives me crazy is I also can't hear shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so, like, you just got to constantly keep your eyes peeled
Yeah.
the whole time. You know, it's just those hunts are usually just really intense, like tiresome hunts
Yes.
because there's no.
It's exhausting. Your head's on a swivel the whole
It's
time.
not like those, pin drop days where I can actually lean back in a saddle and like almost take a nap, and like as soon as I hear like a crunch of a leaf, I'm like boom,
And
on it.
I've hunted around water my whole life, basically, and it is tough hunting near water. You know, when especially in the reeds, it's so windy. Like, man, this is a banger spot. And you're like, I ain't seen anything. You look down, the deer's like right there. You're like, you get here, but it's so windy. Like they're just slipping, like a buck's just slipping through the reeds, like it's nothing. You're like, great, and he's gone because your shot.
That's how it was in that's how it was in Kansas.
Oh, all right, cool. See you later. Because I got nothing behind me because I literally a straight down shot at 6 feet. But it's like that's what we live for basically.
Yeah,
when it comes-
exactly. I mean, that was the same thing in Kansas. It was so windy and like just so much noise.
Yeah.
Like, I never really realized like how noisy the plains were and how much more noisy it was when you were on the ground. Like you can kind of get out of it a little bit when you're in a tree. It's like, but when you're in the middle of the CRP and like, I mean, all you're hearing is the wind.
Yeah.
It's like it was so hard to pick up a deer from
Yeah,
any type
and
of
then you
distance.
look at it too. It's the same thing with deer. Super windy. The deer, they lose that sense of hearing, and that's why they go. They stick that security cover. If it's super windy, deer are skittish too. They stay in that thick stuff.
Yep.
Nice,
man. Well, we've been rapping here for just about an hour. Be sensitive to your time. Know you got super important things to do.
I got kids, man.
You got kids, man. But before I let you run, dude, why don't you let people know where they can find out more about what you got going on this fall? They can follow along with your hunts and check out your videos.
Yeah, YouTube, Instagram, Bowhunting Fiend. Same as always.
Same as always. He's a regular here.
Yeah.
We chain him up in the basement, keep him around, do some podcasts.
Feed him every now and again.
Right. All right, gang. Thanks for listening. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.